Welcome back, everyone. I'm here for episode two with Erika Bornman, and in this episode, we're going to talk about how she left the community that she was in and how her healing journey turned out to be. So, welcome back, Erika. How are you doing?
Hi, Ryan. I'm good, thank you. Yes, I'm very, very happy to be talking to you.
So, we ended up the last episode, talking about sex. Uh,
Yes.
but I mean, it wasn't dirty conversation, but we were talking about the reality of when when members in your community, when they'd be thrown into marriage and they'd be oblivious of the birds and the bees. And I wanted to ask, kind of jumping from there about oblivion as a young girl, before you left, how old were you before you left the community?
I ran away at age 21.
Okay, so did you have any idea what the outside world would be like, or were you in complete oblivion?
I was scared of the outside world. I had been taught to fear the outside world, and I knew that eternal damnation awaited me in the outside world. But this counselor of mine who was sexually molesting me, um, I think I just reached a decision one day and I just realized I can't live like this. And so I was willing to rather damn my soul than live for one more day under those conditions. And so I phoned my aunt, my father's sister, and asked her if I could come and visit. And because I was unmarried, I'd fended off three marriage proposals. I was still under my mother's rule, even though by law I was an adult. But at Kwasizabantu, women, young girl children, remain under their parents' thumbs until the day their parents hand them over to the husband to be under his thumb. So I had to get my mother's permission to get a lift to go to my aunt. And so I convinced my mother that I was just going to go for the weekend. And when I got to my aunt, I just said, I can't go back there. And she said, You don't have to, you can live with me. So she gave me a home. And and that's how I escaped. Yeah,
So it really was an escape.
it was. I
Ah.
had to I had to lie to get out of there. Yeah.
Um, you mentioned in the last episode how, you were groomed and how the abuse started happening. Going back to that, not to dwell on it, but to go back and to understand, um, did you ever have any person to go to besides your counselor who was abusing you? Was there anyone else who you could trust who could have helped you in that situation?
The head of the mission told me to not speak of it to anybody, not even my own mother. And he just forbade me and this man to see each other. But this man didn't listen to his leader. He would still call me. So I had one man of God who told me to stay away from this other man of God, but this other man of God was still calling me and fondling me and kissing me. So no, I had nobody to speak to. The leader of the mission had expressly forbidden me to speak to anybody about it. So
So
you had to,
again, silencing the victims.
yeah.
Now that you can look back, what should have been done once you told the other people, the other elder or whatever, this is happening to me? What should have been done?
Well, about a year later, I realized that this man still had access to young women, and I actually made an appointment to go and see Elo, the head of the mission, and I told him what Muzi had done to me. And Elo asked me permission to record that meeting, and I gave my permission for him to record my meeting. And he claimed to be horrified. And I said to him that I just want to ensure the safety of other young women at Kwasisabantu. And he promised me that Muzi would be removed from all leadership positions and he would be chastised under church discipline. And 2 weeks later, I opened the newspaper to see a huge photograph of Muzi Kunene with an article praising him for something that he'd done. And I phoned Elo and I said, I thought you were going to remove Muzi from all his leadership positions so that he didn't have access to young women anymore. And Elo said to me, I can't quite remember what we spoke about. Can you refresh my memory? And that was when I thought, fuck you. You don't give a damn. And subsequently, I've come to hear of many other survivors of sexual assaults and rape who reported to ALO, and ALO silenced them. He didn't take them to the police. And today, Kwasi Sabantu is shaming those women for not going to the police and saying, why didn't you go to the police? Well, maybe because ALO told us we must be quiet and not speak about it to anyone, including our mothers. So, yeah.
So when you saw that, you saw how they weren't listening to you, although they recorded and pretended to be shocked. Was that when you decided I need to get the hell out of here, or was there a moment that just pushed you off the edge?
I had already left by this stage.
Okay.
I went back just, even though I didn't want to, just to try and save some women. But what pushed me over the edge was this man fondling and kissing me, and me not being able to get away from him unless I physically left. But I believed on a subsequent visit, Alo asked me if this was God's will for my life, because I'd gotten a job as a receptionist in Pietermaritzburg, this city that's 120 kilometers from the mission. And I said to him that I hadn't consulted God on this one. Do you know where I got my bravery from? And he erupted into huge anger, and he told me that I would never be happy, that my future husband would sleep around with other women, as if that's the worst thing that can happen to someone. And then he placed God's curse on my life. And I'm not the only woman he placed God's curse on my life. I've spoken to other women. He did that too as well. And so I fully believed him, and I believed that I was going to hell for probably about 2.5, 3 years. And it's only when I started to understand that maybe their way isn't necessarily the only way. And I started understanding, because by then I had a really nice boyfriend, and I was sharing things with him that had happened to me, and he was horrified. And that's when I started seeing that what I had witnessed and what had happened to me was abuse, pure and simple. And that was when I started, back in 1996, is when I started speaking out against Kwasi Sabantu for the first time. So it's been a long period of time for me, with gaps in between, of trying to get South African authorities to act and to take measures to protect the children that live and grow up there. Yeah.
So you mentioned right now about having a boyfriend, but let's go back just a little bit to when you went to your auntie's house. How was that first year living with your auntie, and were you able to? Did you ever feel not normal at any
Oh
point?
yeah. Oh, sorry. It's summer here in South Africa, and the mosquitoes are gathering around for a feast. So if you see me swiping at something, it's a mosquito.
Okay.
um, I I so badly wanted to belong in the world, but I didn't know how to act. I didn't know how to speak to men but even other women, because we'd had no TV, no radios, no magazines. Um, our books were heavily censored. So I had no frame of reference. I mean, the first time I heard a Queen song um, by with Freddie Mercury was when I was 23, 24 years old. Um, in like 1994, 95. It's insane. So I had no frame of reference with anybody or anything. So I think of that time as my time of being a mimic. So I would just observe how people were acting, how they were speaking, um, how they were dressing, and then I would just mimic what I saw other people doing, and that and the there were a few people that I let into my confidence that then understood that I really know nothing. Like my one boss, for example, he took me to buy my first pair of jeans, and I remember walking out of the shop. He made me wear them, and I remember walking out of the shop and just waiting for that lightning strike to strike me down. So I tried walking under all the awnings and not in the open street, just to protect me from the lightning that I was sure God was going to strike me down. Um, and it was just I would go over every night. I would go over the events of the day and replay every interaction that I had with someone. And I would berate myself because I would be sure that I had messed it up royally because I had no self-confidence. I I only learned what personal boundaries were a few years ago. Um, I I was adrift and lost, but I was free and I had hope. And books saved me. I read a lot of books that other survivors wrote. Not necessarily, they weren't. I don't think there were that many books out that cult survivors had written, but survivors of childhood abuse and that. I remember reading Angela's Ashes was one of the first books I read,
Oh,
and by Frank McCourt, and books that had those kinds of stories gave me hope that I could, if I could just hold on and if I could just learn how to control this all pervasive fear that I lived with and lived under and lived in and lived as, that one day I could find my way to being happy and to being free and to being okay with being me, you know. But boy, I hated myself for the longest time.
so now that you're outside, you're looking at everyone else, you're mimicking people, but how long did it take for you to walk with confidence and to say, I'm Erika Bornman. I don't gotta imitate anyone else. This is me. Did that take a while?
Yeah. I left when I was 21, and I would say that only happened to me in my mid 30s.
Over 10 years.
Yeah.
It takes a while. People think that, the healing process is like the snap. You just leave, you move. People tell me just move on with your life, just be
No,
happy.
no. That's people who say just move on with your life are either in denial themselves, or they have never had something horrifically traumatic happen to them. It's stupid advice to give anyone, and it's well meaning, but that doesn't make it less harmful and stupid. And I if I ever hear somebody say just move on or whatever, I take them aside and I say, you know what, that is probably the least helpful advice you can give anyone, because you need to work through and 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 understand what's happened to you. In the beginning, though, I don't think I could work through anything. I just needed to survive. That took all my energy. And so I think it was many years before I was able to start I mean, I started my advocacy against Kwasi Sabantu, my public advocacy against them. I wrote my first letter to a national magazine in 1996, and then in no, sorry, 1998, I think, 1998, and then in 2000, I published an article about this place that made huge headlines and that. But I was still healing. I mean, but I knew enough by then to know that what they were doing was very, very wrong. But that doesn't mean that I miraculously healed.
Yeah.
I mean, at the age of 47, Um, I married a man who loved me in the way that Kwasi Sabantu taught me men are supposed to love their wives. At the age of 47, our marriage lasted 5 days less than a year because my eyes opened and I realized he was abusing me, but I was still susceptible to that because I hadn't completely looked at and healed those parts of myself that had been so wounded. I had succumbed to the lure of, I'm just going to put the past behind me now and just live my life and just carry on. But it doesn't work like that. It catches up. Well, it caught up to me and led me into a marriage with a very abusive narcissist. Um, yeah, yeah.
Wow. So in this part of the story, you're getting married. Earlier in the story, you were sharing how you had a boyfriend and you were sharing with him, and as you were talking to him, you were understanding that everything was abusive. How was it getting a boyfriend in the first place? I mean, was there that fear also that lightning would strike, holding a boy's hand, or that you'd be like even in my experiences, sometimes I felt stupid. Like, am I doing the right thing? What do I do? And I felt so dumb.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I felt very down. No, absolutely. But also, I mean, um, I've been taught that as a woman, I'm nothing, and that I'm absolutely subservient to men. So I did get into many situations that I shouldn't have gotten into, because I didn't know that I could say no. But so I was quite passive in my relationships. I kind of went with whatever guy really pursued me. Um, I didn't really think that I could go, ooh, I really like him. Let me get to know him. It was more a case of, oh, he really wants me. And that gave me value. And so I would go with them. I was lucky that I'm that the vast majority of them were nice guys. But yeah, I didn't really have agency. I don't feel I kind of just stumbled from one relationship into the other, into the next, without any real understanding of what I was doing.
So when started dating, and when the guys would approach you, did you ever say, "Wait, I need to pray about it. Give me a couple
Ah,
days."
no.
Were you ever like,
Oh,
or
no,
like,
no,
oh,
no.
no, or
No,
like
I stopped. No,
no?
no. When I left Kwasi Sabantu, I have not said, I don't think I've said a single prayer since I left
Okay.
that place at the age of 21. No, I believed I was damned, and that God would have nothing to do with me. So, so I was damned. So then I may as well drink alcohol, and I eventually may as well have sex. And, I was damned anyway. So, yeah.
So there was never like when you got engaged, because you mentioned earlier how Erlo was supposed to be the one to get the ring and to put it on you. When you got engaged, when you got married, was there ever a part of you that was saying, "I wish Erlo were here to put the ring on me," or "I wish my mom were here to, or my family were here to witness this event"?
No,
Okay.
no. Look, my relationship with my non-relationship with my mother and my sister is I mean, I can speak about it now, but that has been a deep wound for a very, very long time. They choose to not have anything to do with me because they say that I chose that when I turned my back on God, and on their spiritual leader. Um, but but the last few years, my life is actually better without my mother in it. So I don't want her in my life anymore at all. Um, I've forgiven her, and I've told her that I've forgiven her. And I have, even though I want to say to victims that of abuse that this emphasis there is on having to forgive your abuser, I also believe is bullshit. I think you can achieve healing without necessarily forgiving them. Um, I don't think your focus should be on forgiving your abuser. I think your focus should be on forgiving yourself, and um, and healing yourself, and screw them. But if it so happens that you arrive at forgiveness, then great. Um, but no, yeah, no, no.
Okay.
I see Elo's face, and I want to hurl. I mean,
Okay.
I feel no nostalgia for that place whatsoever.
So every time you see those mosquitoes, you're picturing Erlo. You just want to smack them. I brought up about, envisioning, if you ever envisioned Erlo to be at your wedding, because this is where our stories kind of go different direction. Because when you left, you were gone, cold turkey, and when I left, I had to heal from my Stockholm syndrome. For those who aren't aware, it's like when you're in an abusive environment, relationship, and when you leave, you still have feelings or emotions, positive emotions towards
Mm.
your abuser. So for me, when I left, the hardest thing was to live my life, because every time I would do something, like let's say I was in LA and I was invited to go to a concert. And in my head, I was so afraid to go to the concert. And my friend is waiting for me to say yes or no. And I'm picturing, my superiors from the community. And in my head, I'm imagining them telling me, you have permission, go to the concert. It was an AC/DC concert, but
Wow.
but I know they would never have given me permission. But I needed to work my mind that way of envisioning them giving me permission, because my structure was, I had to do everything that they told me. I couldn't live without permission. So I was so stuck.
Yes, but so this is so interesting. So I left Kwasizabantu 29 years ago, right? And at the moment, currently in therapy, I am busy working on getting rid of that inner authoritarian authority that I've installed inside my own head. Um, that has to give me permission to enjoy things. Like I no longer see Elo and Kwasizabantu as having authority over me, but somehow I've installed that authority in me, and this authority still has to give me permission to have fun, to enjoy, to be okay, to walk away from toxic situations. So I think I have a feeling it's a lifelong um, process, and maybe at some point we will get to the point where that isn't a concern anymore. But for me, 29 years later, I'm still in therapy for just to allow myself to actually just have a good time, you know. Yeah. So yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that, because I want the audience to understand that we're human beings. I mean, in the cult, we're expected to be like robots, dead to ourselves, dead to our emotions. But we're human beings. We have hearts, we have emotions, just like everyone else. And a, we want to live, point and simple.
Mm.
Um, During your time of, having relationships, um, how did you even get into relationships? Because for me, like, I mean, I kind of lived la vida loca for a point, but I was imitating people, and now I'm
Mm.
trying to just be myself. But when you were doing relationships, did you ever feel that you were just lost and going with the flow, or did you feel
Oh,
that this was
definitely.
you making decisions?
No, 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 no. I was definitely just going with the flow. And I was a pretty young thing and hanging out in bars and, so like I never lacked suitors. So there was never a lack of a suitor or a boyfriend in my life. But again, I didn't really have agency I, over that. And my one friend would sometimes say to me, "Don't you just want to be by yourself for a little while?" Because I would just go from one relationship into the next. Um, I ended relationships because I would feel stifled, and I said to my one friend, like sometimes I look at them and I can't stand the way he breathes. Um, so I was quite good at ending relationships, but getting into them, I would just go with the flow. And I had a friend who said to me, "Don't you just want to take time out to just be by yourself for a bit?" And I didn't understand what she was talking about because um, the next weekend I would go out and somebody would pick me up and there would be the next relationship would start, or not. Um, and so I didn't understand this concept of just being by myself for a while, which I understand now. It's great. It's fantastic. I've been single for a while now. Um, but whoever wanted me had me. It's a terrible thing to say, but it's the truth. Um, like I valued myself that little. I didn't know that I had value. I didn't know that I could value myself. If a man wanted me, well, I was his for the taking, um, because I had no boundaries when it came to men, especially, and I didn't understand that I am someone and something precious to be cosseted and to be um, looked after and to to be treasured. I had no concept of that. I'm only learning that now, and I'm 51. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned earlier, I'm not sure if it was in this episode or in the previous episode, how the woman just had to submit and that was it. And I think that, that those mentalities from cults, it stays with you, or high control relationship, it stays with you. And so when I left my cult, I mean, I was in a lot better shape, back then. So I was, the one pursuing whoever, and um, I know my audience might be like, "Oh my God, what is Ryan saying?" Yeah, I live la vida loca, and I embraced it because a part of me was thinking, "Well, what the hell?" Like I left my cult family, and I didn't see them as a cult, but when I left and I saw how much they shunned me, and I even try to make peace with them, and I've shared this in my podcast, and when I did that, how they would call me an asshole, and it just put me down so low. So having, physical love, or just
Yes.
someone to just hold me,
Lovely. Yes.
it's like,
That,
okay, well, this is my band-aid.
and you know what? There is nothing wrong with that either. Like I'm talking about my past relationships now because I can look at it with a lot more clarity. But I don't judge myself for any of that. And many of my relationships were absolutely wonderful and lovely with really, really lovely guys, you know. Um, and having somebody to love and who loved me is very validating and very wonderful. And not having that right now is actually another step in my healing process, because I need to find my validation in another way and not from some guy adoring me. And I need to start adoring myself and giving myself that love. And I am definitely going to be in a relation, or possibly more, probably more than one, let's face it, relationships again. So I don't want your listeners to think like that I'm in any way kind of judging myself, not anymore. Um, or you for that matter, or anyone for that matter, because that love and that, I mean, it's a very human need, and we're humans. Like, why not? There's nothing wrong with wanting to be in a relationship. There's nothing wrong with being in a relationship. I just think that right now, or for the last while, it's been good for me to focus on my healing. I was in a relationship for a while during the pandemic for a year, um, but that came to an end, but in a really loving, nice way. That's the thing. I'm friends with most of my exes, except my ex-husband. But yeah, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but like I'm trying to say, it's just like that's okay too, you know, like that's also okay. Um, but that when you realize that actually this is not working for me, or this is not helping me, or this is actually hurting me, that's when you can say, okay, I want to change my behavior in XYZ way. But if it's not hurting you and it's not hurting anyone else, then why not?
Yeah. And you mentioned something earlier a little while ago, how, you are a beautiful person. And I forgot exactly how you worded it, but you're, you're someone who should be treasured, and
Worthy of being measured, yes.
worthy of being treasured. And unfortunately, I think every child, every human being should grow up with this concept that there's value in who you
Yes.
are and what you have to offer in a relationship or to society. But when it's so low and you're surrounded with this, and I say it very often, sometimes what cults say to you, or abusive people, becomes almost hypnotic, and it gets stuck to your mind where you think, I am good for nothing, so what the hell, I'll just be in a shitty relationship. And then it left me feeling guilty. Oh, I shouldn't be in this relationship. I would always be breaking up and then be with someone, or I'd be with two. Well, I'd be jumping from person to person and not really valuing them. I didn't value myself. And I think I'm also on my own healing journey, and I'm single right now, not rushing, but it's just I find it very interesting how you're bringing that up, how you had to kind of learn that you are worth being treasured. And I think the
Mm,
audience needs to learn that. Even those who are in the cult, if you're listening, you
mm,
still are someone who deserves to be loved and treasured. Um,
ab-
going back to the mission, um, when you left, did they ever reach out to you, or did they ever, say thank you for your years of service in our, because you did teach for them, right? Or you did help, you did so much work for them. So was there ever any gratitude?
no, God, no.
No, my
No, no. So I did go back for a while. I write about it in my book, how I would sometimes still go back on Sundays, until my mother finally said, "Look, you are not my daughter." And then I only went back once more, and that was for a funeral. So I haven't set foot there since 1996. Um, but no, there would be no gratitude. I mean, they see me as the ungrateful one. Um, yeah. So no, 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 no.
Okay. There's something interesting in the book, because I'm not sure. I think you mentioned that you took a boyfriend with you who had long
Yes,
hair. Is it the one with
yes,
long?
yes, yes, yes.
Um,
That was in 1996 to that funeral. Yeah, yeah.
okay. Did you feel? I mean, what was going through your head when you have this guy with long hair with you at the funeral?
Well, he was in the book. I call him Samuel, and Samuel was very important to my healing. He's the one who helped me see what had happened to me was abusive, and um, and he wanted to come with me, and I needed the support, but I also knew that just looks wise, and I mean, he wore kind of hippie clothing, and he wore jewelry which are and the long hair. I mean, like it was all just so blatantly, defiantly everything that they're not. That but there was a part of me that also by taking him, I was doing that to them, and that also felt good. It was like you didn't break me. You
So for those who are listening on the Spotify, because they can't see what you did.
Oh, I just put my middle finger up.
Okay, there you go.
I was like, a big fat fuck you. Look who I'm bringing to your house. I'm bringing somebody who does not adhere to any of your principles, and he's a better man than any of you are. So, yeah.
And I like that you said that you brought that up because even though he wasn't in your mission, the way you write about him sounds like he was a good man.
It's a very
And
good man.
and I hope that people who are in these cults that they open their eyes and see that there is goodness outside in the world, because there's this idea that everyone outside is demonic or they're possessed or they're evil, and then you brought this guy who has goodness, and I wonder how they took it. I wonder if any of them were able to see past all the brainwashing. Probably
No,
not.
no, no. They pretty much ignored him. And they didn't really speak to him. They were extremely dismissive of him, and my mother wouldn't actually let him into her house. He had to go back to the car and wait for me while I spoke to her. She wouldn't allow him inside her home. So they were extremely rude and dismissive and horrible to him. Yeah, yeah,
But what a friend to go with you,
mm,
nonetheless.
yeah.
We need more friends like that, I think,
We
who
do,
are
we do. Yeah.
so good. Um, in your book, you mentioned something which I found to be very interesting, and that was, I think it was your first concert.
Oh yes, Laura Branigan.
Can you walk us through
Oh, good.
how did you feel? Going to your first concert, and like you said earlier, you never had TV, radios, you barely heard Queen like in 1994. How was
Yeah.
this
So
experience?
so my this was my brother's housemate asked me to go with him to this concert, and I only many years later thought, hang on, was I on a date? Because I was so clueless back then. But and we went to down to Durban, and he'd got us really good seats, so we were quite close to the stage. And here was this powerful woman with this wild hair. And I remember one of her outfits was tight leather trousers. I mean, I'd never seen anything like that on a woman. And she was strutting up and down that stage, and she was so powerful and so joyful and so just. And I was like, I wanted to be her so badly. I wanted to be able to be in my body the way that she was in her body. And I wanted to be able to just project myself the way she was projecting herself. I was completely in love with her. I was like so blown away. It was the first time I had seen a woman perform, um, and she was powerful and beautiful, and I was just like, that's who I want to be. That's how I want to be. Um, I still I see where I was sitting. I see the stage. I see her. It made such an impression on me. Yeah, and that's what 27 years ago now. Yeah.
What's your favorite Laura song?
Well, I think it's a cover, but it's The Power of Love. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you sing it? Not now, but can you sing it? I mean,
Yeah, yeah, I still know every word. Yeah, yeah. And Gloria. She
I love
sang
Gloria. That's the for me.
Gloria.
That's my all-time favorite one. Yeah.
Gloria.
Um.
And the
Yeah.
way she was strutting. Oh man, I tell you, oh no, I honestly like I know she's passed away, but if she was still alive, I would seek her out just to tell her how she changed my life that day. Yeah.
Because it's in the book, and so as a reader, you go through it, and what the author writes, it really impacts the reader. So when you wrote about that experience, it brings a smile to the reader's face. It brought a smile to my face because it sounds so empowering as you're reading it.
Yay, I'm happy. I'm happy to hear that. Yeah,
So
my book isn't all doom and gloom.
what was that?
My book isn't all doom and gloom.
No, that's what I like about it, that there's so many different parts of you. There is, the victim in the first part. Then you see bits of a fighter, one who fights back. You see how you're growing and getting into the world, getting jobs. That part of you that's dating, and that part of you that is motivated to help prevent children from getting abused. So can you share about how you've been on this mission to, use your voice to prevent children from being abused again?
Yeah, so 2 years ago, um, a few of us got together and we spoke to News 24, and which is South Africa's biggest online news organization, and they put a whole investigative team together, and they spent 7 months talking to survivors, investigating this place, and then they published an expose called Exodus. And there's actually a 4-part podcast that they created as part of Exodus that is really, it's won awards. It's very, very beautiful. It weaves together the story of Kwasi Sabantu, but also my story and the story of my one friend, Felimpilo Malinga. And it weaves together our stories in such a beautiful way. It's just 4 episodes. It's worth finding. It's on Spotify, Apple, Exodus by News 24. I really recommend people listen to it. And then, as a result of all that, I was offered a book deal by Penguin Random House, and so I wrote my book. I drew on the journals and stuff that I'd written over the many years, but I wrote it really quickly. It was like less than 6 months from when I wrote the first words to when I wrote the final words. But it was unbelievably difficult. It was really, really, it was awful. I spent every day crying. My cats got me through that. They didn't leave me alone for a second. They followed me everywhere, even into the bathroom. They were like with me and purring on top of me all the time. And since then, it's just been trying to keep raising awareness. As a result of the News 24 investigation, there's a body in South Africa called the CRL Rights Commission. It's the Commission for the Protection of such a long name, cultural, religious, and linguistic communities of South Africa. So it's a government body that exists to protect religious, cultural, and linguistic communities. And they started an investigation more than 2 years ago. They have had many hearings with absolutely horrendously heartrending testimony from many people. They haven't published their findings yet, but who knows? Hopefully, it'll be out soon. Who knows? And maybe then they have the authority to say the police need to do this. They people have to listen to them. They're a Chapter 9 institution. So we're all hoping that they will find that the authorities need to take action, because everybody's just sitting back. The Department of Education is doing nothing. The school's still going. It's business as usual for them. And and people say, why haven't you taken them to court? Well, firstly, because I have no money, and secondly, because according to the law, there's not a hell of a lot that I can take them to court for. But why haven't they taken me to court, I think, is the bigger question, because they have millions and they've been threatening to take us to court. But so where's my summons? I think that is a much more telling question, asking why haven't they taken legal action against me, considering that I've called all the things I've called them out for doing. So yeah, we'll see. But I had a breakthrough last week in therapy, because the last 3 months I've been in a very dark place, because I just felt so helpless. I felt like nothing I've done has actually changed anything. And then I just realized last week that the only person I can save is myself. I cannot stay in this dark hole of feeling helpless because I'm not saving the children who are growing up there. I cannot be their savior. I can help point the way and I can do as much as I can, but I cannot be their savior. I had to release myself from that, and to just acknowledge that it is okay for me to actually also just have fun sometimes. I don't have to just be so 100% focused on trying to stop this place. Like I am entitled and I am allowed to actually also just live my life. So that's a very recent realization. So we'll see. But I do feel freed. I do feel freed up. I feel like a dark cloud has lifted. I feel less paralyzed. I've been paralyzed these past few months. I owe so many people emails and stuff that I just haven't been able to do because I've been in such a dark hole. But I feel like I'm emerging from that, having realized that the only person I can speak for is me. I can't be everybody's spokesperson. I just need to look after myself for a little bit.
Thank you for speaking up. Thank you for writing the book. I can't believe it took you 6 months. Because there's just so much detail. And in our last episode, when I brought up about how your mother was burning all of the things, you kind of took me by surprise, because you were mentioning the color of the clothing, and it just shows how good of a memory you have. Because cults, or these toxic places, they'll say things like, oh, she probably doesn't remember all the details, oh, she's making it up. But I think that's a great example that you knew exactly what happened there. And I think that scares them. It scares people because they don't want that in court. I mean, because
No.
it's it stays. Trauma stays. Some people they're able to forget, or they're able to put it in a place in their mind where they can't access that memory. But then unfortunately, sometimes something triggers that
Mm.
memory to just resurface. But it must be so hard for you because those memories are in the front from what it sounds.
Yeah. So I do have black holes in my memory because that is what trauma does. It creates these black holes in your memory. But what I'm very grateful for was that in the 1990s, shortly after I'd left, when everything was still very, very fresh for me, I wrote a lot. I wrote journals, a lot of journals. And so when I was writing my book, I unearthed these journals and I would read stuff and I'd go, oh my God. And I'd completely forgotten about that. But I had written about it in such detail 25 years ago. And I'm really grateful to younger Erika for doing that because but there are times where I just there are whole swaths of time that I have very little memory of. But the memories that I do have are very, very clear. Yeah, yeah.
And how was it when you got approached to have that book deal? What was going through your mind? Was your heart racing? Were you
Oh
scared?
man. Oh, I've always known. I mean, I've been saying to my friends for the last 20 years that I'm going to write a book. So this was kind of like the universe coming to me and saying, you've been saying for 20 years you're writing a book. Now you really are writing a book. So I was over the moon. And Penguin Random House, I mean, like I always wanted a little penguin on my book. Like I didn't, it was a dream come true, honestly, a dream come true. And the team there were fantastic. My editor was amazing. Um, so so yeah, it was a fast process, but they a very thorough process. I poured everything into those 6 months. And yeah, my next project I'll take a lot longer. It'll be much easier. But it was a some friend. I didn't tell many people I was writing a book because I've received death threats. I've received horrible messages. I'm mindful of my safety. I don't. It's only recently that I've been saying where I'm going to be when I'm at a book event, that I actually put on social media where I'm going to be. Otherwise, I usually only like post about something once I'm back home and safe again. So I didn't tell many people I was writing a book because I didn't want them to. I didn't want to be killed before I had written my book. Um, and um, and but here and there, somebody would say to me, "Oh, it must be so cathartic to write this." And I said to my therapist at the time, like, the next person who says that to me, I'm going to punch them in the face because it's torture. It doesn't feel cathartic. It's torture. It really was torture. But of course, the end product is catharsis. Of course it is. But in the moment, especially writing about my childhood, it didn't feel cathartic. It felt like I had just subjected myself to open surgery without anesthetic, and I had done so willingly. And I was like, if they hadn't given me an advance that I'd spent, I would have stopped writing. But I had to finish
Yeah.
writing it. So yeah, I'm grateful that I did. I'm very proud of my book. I am. I'm very proud of Mission of Malice. Yeah.
And I'm going to leave a link for the Amazon. Here in America, we have Amazon, so I'll leave the link so
Yeah.
people
Thank you.
can get a book. Hell, get a few copies. Give it to someone in the mission. Maybe they'll change their mind. I don't know, but there's something kind of to like going towards closing this episode. One of my favorite parts, or I guess a piece of your book, is how endearing you speak about your father, but
Yeah.
also about how important your brother
Oh, my brother.
was for your journey. So,
And
bre-
is.
and he still is, of course. Can you share with the audience how important it was to have a brother so supportive, how that helped you on your journey?
So that first night when I got to my aunt in Pietermaritzburg and I said to her, I can't go back, I phoned my brother who was in Durban. And we were still again in apartheid days, and he had been conscripted into the army. And so he was in Durban in the army. And I phoned him and he drove up that night, and him and Iris sat with me, and I shared just a few things with them. I didn't tell them what Muzi had done to me. I just told them about other things. And since that day, my brother has been my staunchest supporter, and he has not once wavered in his support of me. And yeah, yeah. I don't think I would be here if it wasn't for my brother. I wouldn't be here anymore. So he has a family now, um, two two sons, and he has broken the cycle of abuse. I watch him with his sons, and he is an amazing father. He is, oh, he is just, yeah, he's my hero. Yeah.
If your brother is listening to this episode, what would you like to tell him?
Oh, he knows how much I love him and how much I appreciate him. And yeah, and that he always has my back. Um, and that he doesn't sit in judgment on me, even when I've messed up royally. He's just always there to help me. Um, and I am so unbelievably lucky that I have him in my life. We live on separate continents now, so our conversations are mainly over video chats. But when we do see each other once every few years, it's just amazing. Yeah.
So thank you so much for sharing, your pains, your victories, your journey. And for someone who has just left, let's say the mission or somewhere, some other place similar to the mission, and let's say that person is feeling lost, confused, what advice would you share to that person?
Wow. I would tell them that they are worthy of the most beautiful life and of love, and to hold on. And if they read, to there are so many amazing books now. There are so many amazing support groups to find all the books that Dr. Janja Lalich has written. I think you guys say Lalich. I still have the German, so I say Lalich. And 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 if you're not a reader, find them on Audible. So listen to them as audiobooks, because there is a world waiting to embrace you and to love you and to be kind to you. Um, and that it's going to be entirely normal to feel despair, but that is not your entire future. There is hope, there is light, there is love. Yeah.
So thank you for all the beautiful words you've said, all the
Thank
testimony, and for having the guts to, write a book. And I think we need more Erika Bornmans, not the victim, but the one who's able to stand up and not be afraid to speak your truth. So we're gonna end it here. So now the next part for the viewers is to go to Amazon or wherever and to buy the book. So after this, the homework assignment is buy the book, read it, enjoy
and
it.
not but not before I've said thank you to you, Ryan, and to you for sharing your healing journey on this platform, and for being so frank about your journey, and even your weight loss and your fitness journey. And you're just allowing us into your life, and it is so wonderful and refreshing. And you're gathering all these amazing people who are sharing their story and their wisdom and that. And I think that something is true for you and for me, because you were 17. You were still a child. For me, 17 is so young. You and I have both become the adults we needed when we were children. And I think that is something very beautiful.
Well, thank you so much, Erica. Now you made my day. Now I need to write my own book.
Yes, yes,
But I'll,
yes.
I'll I'll wait 20 years. I'll do it like, yeah, I'll wait 20 years and
Journal, journal,
I'll be doing
journal.
I'll be doing my journal. So thank you so
Definitely.
much again. Everyone, this is the Truth That Heals podcast, and you've been listening to Erika Bornman and me, Ryan Anthony Hernandez. Thank you very much.